And so the next day, I had a call from Chief Wednesday night about 10 o'clock that there'd been a train wreck. And I wanted me to come in a little early and just kind of survey the crew and everything. So I did. I came in. I was a little early that day, and what I did was just provide communication for anything they wanted. In other words, if they wanted power off everybody, I could get the dispatcher and get a hold of the right people. And so that's pretty well all I did that day. I just stayed out of the way and watched the going-ons, which was quite a bit. They was trying to move some stuff, and I remember one fella, a big fella that had a full beard and full red beard, and they had the water cannon turned over here on the other tank at that time, and so he said, you know, if we have to work in mud, we might not appreciate it very much and everything. So anyway, they just kept the water off. Not the water off, but off that. So anyway, we just kind of mangled in and out and kept kind of people out and everything. Of course, we had Toots and somebody else out here in front of the building. And they was keeping people, you know, walking in there and in and out there. And they was coming in, and of course, on the viaduct up there, they'd get on top of the viaduct and that and other. Had to keep them off of them. So all we did that particular day is just kind of be on the lookout ourselves and kind of keep people out of the way and keep them. Pretty well, we'd had a 1,200-foot perimeter set up around it there. And so that day they decided, well, you know, the people can walk in, but they don't need to, you know. So Mr. Holcomb was a claims adjuster for L&N. He had his vehicle behind Bateman's bait shop there in that bridge. Well, I pulled my unit in front of the upper side of his, going down that way that day. And so anyway, getting back to kind of beginning there, that's all I did that day was just kind of surveying, you know, act as communication man, really. And so the next day, I think Cowboy or Roy Douglas, he had gotten sick, and I think he was supposed to come up and work the school zone or something in the morning. And so he got sick, and the guy wanted me to come on up and work the school zone. And as soon as I got through working the school zone, come on down and everything, you know, which I did, and everything was still going good and everything, you know. And so anyway, that morning about 10, Friday morning about 10:30, they were building cars and setting them on the track. L&N had their crane sitting almost on the viaduct, and Steel City had theirs out where they could pick up and move around, you know. They was on rubber. And so about 10:30 that morning, Mr. Yates, he's over there expecting, well, to see if anything got in the way, because he was the county agent at that time. And anyway, I sat there and again watching people out of the way, keep them out of the way. And guy, he came over, and he and I both was sitting. Well, he was in pictures there. You can see one of the pictures where you just get just a face of him, you know, in front. You can tell if you know who it is. You can tell who it is. But anyway, his rest of him it was hid by that tank. And so anyway, about 10:30, they Steel City reached over, which he shouldn't have been doing, reached over that propane tank and picked up a set of trucks. The truck is all four wheels, you know, with the springs and everything on it. And those things, if you've never seen one of them, they're like the front wheels of a wagon, or the fifth wheel under a tractor trailer. That way those wheels can negotiate little turns, you know, and this, that, and that. And so, anyway, he had hold of that large one, then there was one set of wheels that just come off like a set of barbells and hung under the bindings of that. But as he rolled over that, he turned it around a little bit and it fell off. And it did, just like it turned this bottle up here. Only it's round, and he hit hit right on top of it there. Hit right on the rim of it. And everybody kind of jumped back a little bit. It left a black spot on that tank car where about like my side of my two hands were here. And it was, that morning, it was about 18 degrees that morning, but it warmed up, the sun got up. And so it was about 55 degrees that afternoon. Warmed up to about 55 degrees that afternoon. Well, about, like I say, 243, that little fracture, it was a fracture there. Well, it came just like taking a wrapper off of a cigar. The three pieces, the small cap on the end went up almost to the first house on the left up there, and hitting the street. The second one hit right, well, not too far from the guy's vehicle where he was at. The third piece came over the old, what used to be the old span building there, a concrete building, and hit the back side of it, and looked like he just took a huge saw and just went right down the end of that building and everything. So there's a retired fireman that was with York, sitting on the other end of the building. And he parked his car there. That piece of metal that come off of that tank car, it cut through that building. It cut through that building, hit the car on the hood, knocked the engine out of it, went 6 feet deep and cut in the ground, and cut the water line that fed the water cannon. So that no water cannon. And so anyway, but before that happened, I stopped at T-Boy and Dad, and I said, well, he was working for Miss Tate that day, and Van Johnson was there, but he was inside the building, and of course, T-Boy and I, we used to work. He used to work as a deputy, and he and I attended the hazardous materials school up at Dixon. They had a class on up there. And I said, T-Boy, what are y'all doing over here today? He said, well, I said, called Miss Tate this morning and said, we're going to be out today, might as well just take the whole day off. And so anyway, I said, you know, I never did have a good feeling about this thing. He said, I never did either, and I didn't. From the time I heard about it that night, that Wednesday night, I had a ominous feeling about it, and so saying a gut feeling, or what do you want to think? And so anyway, I walked up there and talked to him in my vehicle, sitting in that little old bridge there against Holcomb, to keep people from driving in. They could walk in, but they couldn't drive in. So when about the time I got through talking to T-Boy, and about 5 minutes before we got through, I was talking to Chief, and he and I was standing as close from here to you and myself from the end of that tank. And he went over, he got in his car, and I went up and talked to him. He rode there a little bit, and went on up and got in my car, and I realized the fact that I had taken my jacket off, and we still had a deal with that over there that didn't blow up. And they got some water on it, and I think McKeon had brought their fire truck down with hosing it down. And so anyway, I looked back, it had gotten warm that morning, and I took my jacket off and laid in the back seat of the car. And so I thought, well, if I stay over here, they're going to unload, relieve the pressure on that one, because that tank, something had hit the end of it and just inverted the end of it. And so that was one they were really concerned about. And the one they were really concerned about didn't blow. But anyway, that's the way things go sometimes. But anyway, I got my jacket on. I thought, well, if they're going to relieve the pressure, because they already had it hooked up, they just had, because there's a difference between hooking a truck up and a car. So they had to make the necessary things to change the parts and pieces to do that. And they'd hooked it up, but fortunately they hadn't opened it. And so I thought, well, I might need to stay over here this afternoon. And I knew Ted which come chief, Ted Tarpley. They'd gone down and picked up the other car and brought it up, because that way they'd have two of them up here, well, three at the time, and help with traffic. And so what they wanted everybody to keep the traffic up, to keep everybody out, if they opened that valve up, make sure that if it ruptured or something, or caught fire away, they would have some vehicles around anyway. But anyway, they was back up, coming up the highway, when he saw the plume of smoke. And so what I did, I thought, well, if I'm going to stay over here, I may as well put my jacket on, because I knew it was going to get cold, as soon as the sun went down. And I opened the back door and laid my walkie-talkie on the dash, and opened the back door, and reached in and got my jacket and put it on. I went back up, and about the time I sat down in the front seat of the car, it went off. And I was looking right down where it was at. It looked just like a huge ball of smoke coming up through there. If you ever saw a huge sage-grouse fire, the smoke looked about like that on you. Because you see a lot of smoke with sage-grouse, you don't see much flame. And of course, there wasn't any flame at that time. They just spurts of that stuff coming out. And when it was out there a little bit, it just turned into vapor. And so for just a second, that's what I looked at. And I thought, self, I'm not going to get myself out of here. so I reached out my walkie-talkie. And I already had my cap, my coat on. And about the time I opened the door and started to get out, there was a rock hit me on the forehead there. And just suddenly kind of knocked my cap up a little bit, but it on the forehead there. And I looked up. When I looked up, it looked like all the bedrock on that railroad was up in there just flying around. And there's a hard hat or two up there also blowing around and everything. And I thought, Seth, I better get myself out of here. And so about the time I got to the back of the car to get out of it, I heard a kind of a poof like. And when it did for about a second, probably, or 2 seconds, I was about waist deep in blue flame. As it got on the ground there, it's spreading out. And propane's a little heavier than air, so it just spread out. And I was about waist deep in blue flame, and I thought, oh God, what a way to die. And so I thought, because Toots and I had been out to a house just a few nights before that had burned, and 2 people got burned up in that house. We had to go out and inspect it, make sure there was no foul play or anything, But anyway, and there's a little voice in my head said, "Don't breathe. Don't breathe." Just like I'm talking to you, a voice that said, "Don't breathe." I didn't. At that time I heard that little voice, I heard something like opening onto my left, just like you had put raw potatoes into hot grease for fish. Yeah. Well, I looked over that way, and I turned around and looked. The building was spontaneously bursting as its flames come up. As it went up that way, it just went out too. And that's when I got another gear I didn't know I had. So I got on up, and I thought, well, if I get behind Slate Lumber Company, I might be all right. And so I cut kind of across to go into the front of Slate Lumber Company. Well, by the time I got up there, that flame was already there. And so there wasn't one thing to do if I was going to go through it. I just shut my eyes and put my hands over my face and go through it. And that's what I did. So when I got on it, what I thought was safe, I opened my eyes, and that morning, Carmen Oil, they had unloaded 6,000 gallons of gasoline in one of those upright tanks against everybody's wishes that morning. But the paint on that tanks was trying to catch fire, and I thought, out of the frying pan into the fire, I could just see that thing just going to turn into a blip. Really, but it didn't. But anyway, I heard people screaming back down behind me. And I looked down where the old log plant was there, where later on the electric company moved in there. I looked down through there, and all you see, the flame looked like a wave. I mean, it looked liquid. It just flamed it, and then hit that old block building and just rolling right back over itself and everything. And I heard 3 or 4 people scream down there. I thought, oh God, be with them. And at that time, I had made it in behind the Slate Lumber Company, and I noticed my hands felt a little funny. And I looked down, and of course, all the epidermis. Fortunately, I had took my jacket on, because you can see right where the sleeves stopped. And so anyway, I shook my hand. I had little yellow plasma blisters, and I shook my hand like that, and they went out. And I realized then I had a walkie-talkie. I said, in my car, 319, I said, 319, and Thompson was dispatcher. He said, 319, go ahead. I said, Jimmy, all the thing just ruptured over here. You all help me. You can. It's 10-4. I mean, you can really tell the difference in him answering and then the 10-4. Realize what happened. And so I just held on to the walkie-talkie. And because I didn't feel it, no pain at all. Because 12 thickness burn. You don't feel anything. It just sears all your sensing nerves and everything at the ends. So you don't feel anything. As far as heat, it felt about like a summer day. About like a real hot summer day, really, till I got in behind that building. Because everything that was exposed around my ears and through there, it got burnt, So I just had a few instances of warmth, really. And after that, it didn't feel anything. So I got on it, and about that time, Leroy Pettigrew and Lonesome came outside the back door. because Leroy had the shop over there behind it at that time, Clayton Lumber Company. And the three girls, the two girls was in the office there, Jean Evans and her daughter. And her daughter was pregnant. And so I ran up to them as they was getting in the vehicle, and Leroy jumped on the back, and Lonesome, he got behind the wheel. And I said, y'all drop me off at the hospital? And he said, yeah, we will. So they just didn't turn around in, they just run backwards to the old ice house and turned up and went up there. And people was out there, the old building was trying to catch fire, and some of the fellas that was in the ice house there, they took snowballs. And it was just right on the eave. It didn't, anything that had tin on, it didn't burn, but anything that didn't have tin on, well, it burned. And they would burn that if they hadn't put that fire out right on the eave there where it was on the wooden edge there, you know. But anyway, they got it put out, and of course this time I was already gone. And so they dropped me off to the hospital, and I gave Dillingham, which one was a fireman, I told him, I said, I don't believe I'm going to need this for a while. Why don't you take it? And so they took me on inside and took me straight back to the ward on back of the, and I helped the little girl get, I've forgotten now what her name is, but she helped me get my gun belt off because that thing is clipped on a certain way and everything. He didn't know how to get it off. You couldn't get it off. So I told her, showed her how to unclip it, and it did. And I looked, and I was on the top bunk. I think it's 2, 4, I believe there's six bunks in there, I believe. And anyway, I looked, I was up on the top bunk next to on this end, in the top bunk. And looked down, and you couldn't tell whether people was white, black, or whatever. One fellow that I could see a good, he was standing on this, like he was doing push-ups. And all this skin up in here would just turn loose and just hang it down. You know.